It's time for another one of these videos where we examine a truly remarkable thread from a truly amazing, incredible place. So, first of all, I should give credit where it's due. Someone on my subreddit does the dirty work and scours that place for things that are interesting, and came across it and drew the attention of my subreddit to it and gave it the appropriate flair. Fucking love this shit we've got going, it's hilarious. And of course all these chaps here, good lads, every one of them. Alright, so this concerns, I can say it now because we're far enough into the video and I can mark this video appropriately. Because if you swear within the first 30 seconds of a video, it has a different category for advertisers and stuff and it gets flagged. So I can now say it. Another thread from the shithole subreddit. Except this time, it's not a cringe thread, because we have had really, really cringy threads. Like, see that one? Oh man, where's that cringe thread? The actually cringe thread. Holy shit, let's find it. Alright, I should draw attention to this first. Look at this here. Someone did a satirical version. I already looked at this one. I already looked at this thread 3 months ago. I should make a playlist and just add all of these videos to it. Just a playlist called The Escapades of the Scumfucks on the Shithole subreddit. I should really do that. Because this one was super cringe. But this one, it's a bit different. So we have cringe threads, but then we also have dignified threads. It's really strange. It's like whiplash I'm getting when I come across these threads. They're so whimsical. It's like one day they are laying out the most embarrassing cringe possible, and then a few weeks later a post gets 1,100 upvotes where they mirror the sentiments of us. They are in agreement with us. They acknowledge that we're fucking right. The real home of Total War, which it honestly is. Everyone on this subreddit pretty much has been playing Total War for 10, 20 years. If you're like me, you've been playing it since day one. You got the demo CD from PC Gamer in May 2000, and you were playing Shogun 1 when you were a little 8-year-old, 9-year-old kid. So that's what we're all like around here, and we care about gameplay. We can play these games well. We understand the games. We can compare games using criteria that are meaningful, like gameplay and engagement and opportunity. What fun is made of, like how fun happens. We can all do that. So this is accurate. We're right. This is what I'm getting at. We are being vindicated at the moment by the shithole subreddit itself. See, if they were as sensible as this 24/7, my subreddit would have no reason to exist, because people on the shithole subreddit would already be saying these things on a regular basis, and there would be an incentive for the developers to make better games. But as it stands, the shithole subreddit is usually packed with fucking cringe like this. Look at the state of this. Like, see if you haven't seen my video yet. What was it called again? I found the cringiest thread ever on r/Total War. Yeah. So this is a different kind of video today, because we're going to be maybe actually applauding a thread, but at the same time, a thread like this is surely going to be really provocative and is going to stir up the scumfucks, and they're going to be all over this, raging. So let's see. Alright, let's go over the thread. Header of the thread: lack of tactical depth in recent Total War titles. That is really provocative, holy shit. This is what I started off with just over a year ago now. This is what I was complaining about. There's just no tactical depth. And then he says, before I get downvoted to the depths of the ancient Greek underworld based on this post title, hear me out. It's kind of pathetic that he has to in before. Like, he's got to put a caveat or a disclaimer or something. It's like he's got to couch it. So much heavy couching in order to say what he actually thinks. Like, in any other decent subreddit where it's sensible, people just get on with the fucking post. They just get on with it. They just get to the point. But on this one, you need a disclaimer at the start. to placate. My god. I've been on a long ride with CA, playing every title since Rome 1. I'm not saying that to imply I know better. I'm saying that because it means I love this franchise. Love the franchise. It's a franchise that scratches an itch no other series does, but recent titles aren't quite hitting the spot anymore, and I think it's mostly down, and he puts mostly in italics, mostly down to one macro issue. Macro issue, alright. The lack of tactical depth in battles. In more recent titles, i.e. post-Rome 2, I've seen terminal decline in this area, and I think that can be put down to the following factors. Wow. So, there's a terminal decline of tactical depth in battles. Fucking hell. How does he get away with this? How does he get away with saying this stuff on the shithole subreddit? We've got Warhammer 3 coming up. Warhammer 2 is... it's their biggest success ever. Total War's most mainstream success ever. Warhammer 2. And we have Warhammer 3 coming. And someone is bitching about the gameplay itself, the essence of the gameplay. These are real-time tactics battles. That's the most important part of the game. The real-time battles, and they are real-time tactics. You have units, you position them, you move them over time. They have abilities, they have properties. You're trying to defeat other units using your units. Real-time tactics. And he's saying that the games lack tactical depth, terminal decline. This is, I don't know if they realise this over here on this shithole subreddit, but they've just put 1,100 upvotes on a thread saying that these games are bad at what they're for. They are bad examples of their genre. That's like... oh man, how would I even say this? That's like going up to a footballer and telling him, you have poor ball control, your dribbling is bad, your passing is inaccurate, there's a terminal decline in your abilities. And you know what happens when footballers have a terminal decline in those essential functions, properties? They fucking retire. I don't know how I would even get a better analogy for this. It's like you're attacking the core of what it stands as. That's what it is. If it's a Total War game, and it's an RTT, and the tactics are bad, terminally declined, then you're basically just taking a giant shit right on the face of the game. 1,100 upvotes. And this is why I got such pushback, because that's exactly what I did. I took a shit on the face of the game. Not just this game, but all of the games since Fall of the Samurai. 8 years of terminally declined, tactically flat games with no depth, tactically flat. What was it I said? First of all, this is what I did. I came out after Troy with a video where I said, what the fuck even are these games? Are they real-time tactics, real-time strategy? Are they MOBAs? Are they RPGs? Like, what the fuck are they? And I was trying to provoke people into thinking, like, what is it that we're actually playing here? What the fuck is this shit? So, to have it be confirmed here by the shithole subreddit itself that they're not even good examples of their genre, with 1,100 upvotes, I don't know how many... 87% upvoted. Look at that, 87%. Let's refresh this and see if we can gauge where it actually is. 87%, holy shit. So that is barely 150 downvotes to 1,100 upvotes. So this is an overwhelming majority of agreement here. No one is contradicting this guy, really. It doesn't seem like it. So maybe the comments are not going to be pushing back. We've got 300 comments nearly, and we're still getting comments because this was 21 hours ago. And this is a substantial thread on this subreddit. Let's have a look. Let's see top in the past 24 hours. Let's see how high up it is. Look at this. 1, 2, 3, fourth highest thread, because that's an ad. The fourth highest thread in the past 24 hours. Oh, and let's look at this while we're here. Look at this. Troy Mythos, a 3-to-2 upvote to downvote ratio, and let's have a look at this. I want to see this to see how it is right now, because that was a while ago. But yeah, that's so funny. Look at that. Butthurt Warhammer fanboys that just don't care about anything except Warhammer. They're not here for Total War. Guys, they don't give a shit about Total War. They do not give a fuck about it. I was saying that these Warhammer games are bad Total War games, and all they heard was, "You are trying to take my toy away from me. Fucking losers." Alright, we've got 2-1. Alright, so it's gotten a little bit better. So the knee-jerk Warhammer fanboys turned up in droves and started piling dislikes on it because it wasn't Warhammer. Yeah, and this is the kind of people that did it. Fucking losers, man. State of them. Absolute state of these fucking freaks. Alright, let's get back to this. So, let's look at his reasons, because he's got a bullet-pointed list, a checklist of 6 items for why these battles lack tactical depth. Stamina/vigor no longer matters because units don't tire. Ergo, battlefield positioning no longer matters. You can simply sprint units wherever, whenever. Yeah, I've heard this. It takes forever for units to get tired. I've heard this be expressed multiple times over the past year. In Warhammer, you just sprint with your units all the time. You don't care about walking. People would appeal to Medieval 2 and Rome 1 and say that they appreciated how you were incentivized to walk your units to the fight and only run when you really had to. But in this game, there's not a trade-off there. You're always just running. That's the difference. And that really hurts the positioning aspect of combat. Like, usually in older Total War games, especially with heavy infantry, you would tend to walk your units and then you would only run when it would give you a positioning advantage. But in modern Total War games, you're always just running all the time. So getting to the fight means nothing. Alright, combat is so short-lived that wider strategic manoeuvres are no longer viable because by the time you march to the point of contact, the unit has already disintegrated. So the battles are too fast. This is another appeal to something like Medieval 2, I think. Could be true. I don't play these games, so I wouldn't know. Keeping units in reserve no longer has an impact, again, because stamina is meaningless. Yeah, that's true. I remember when I was talking about... how did this happen again? When Admiral Price and Melkor were being passive-aggressive towards me, I would have my attention drawn to statements they were making around that time. And I think it was Admiral Price that was like... Hang on, let's see if I can find this. Alright, I found it. Get a load of this bullshit. After going through my comments on my recent video, I've realised that when people say they want Total War to allow tactics in the game, like this fucking guy is here, after 6 months, like the fucking shithole subreddit itself is saying they want tactics now, with 1,100 upvotes. The fucking Warhammer fanboy cretins themselves are saying it, for fuck's sake. Look at this. They don't mean they want to think about how to defeat their opponent, but fantasise about being historic generals. What the fuck? To them, tactics is not a way of thinking and rewarding strategic play. Well, it would be tactical play, it wouldn't be strategic, what the fuck? Tactics is whatever the latest Osprey book says the Roman Legion did, and if the game doesn't necessitate that, it's not tactical. These guys actually want to rotate their tired legions. But, as you can see, it's more they want stamina to have any impact on the game whatsoever. Keeping units in reserve no longer has an impact, again, because stamina is meaningless. In these games, you're never going to have the sensation of introducing a fresh unit to one that's tired and having the fresh one outperform the tired one. You're never going to have that sensation. I'm more and more convinced that the historic community is made up in large part by LARPers that don't want strategic games but a holodeck for their historical fantasies. See how disingenuous this bullshit is? See how fucking fake? It's like, you can read this now. Obviously I read it at the time and I feel the same thing I feel right now, but in the context of a fucking thread like this, where Warhammer fanboys, Warhammer players themselves are complaining about how flat these fucking games are. It's like, this is not a situation where people like me are comparing good games to bad ones. This is one of the people themselves, a Warhammer player themselves, saying, this Warhammer that we actually have is bad compared to the Warhammer we should have. So, as you can see, this is just complete nonsense now. Like, holy shit. Oh, look, here's the responses too. So they will be terribly disappointed knowing that their favourite game system is in fact a game system and not history in action. But that's the thing, it isn't even a game system. The gameplay is flattened and almost non-existent. All of these systems have been stripped. We already had Total War games with stamina, Rome 1, Medieval 2. It's not relevant anymore. These games are being gutted and casualised and arcadified to fuck, and even the shitters on the shithole subreddit, the absolute scumfucks on here, are turning up to agree this time. A year after Troy came out. We've been saying this for a year. We have been saying this for a year now. We've been saying it for a year, and we've been saying it articulately and convincingly, and it's finally getting through to them. Seems like it's finally getting through to them. I have actually had apologies and admissions of being wrong, having been wrong from these people. They're appearing more and more frequently now. People are turning up to say, actually, you were right. I thought about this a bit more, and you were actually right all along, and I apologise. So there's probably going to be more and more of that, especially if Warhammer 3 comes out and it just continues to get everything wrong, which it will, because it doesn't need to get anything right. Or even, I should say, even in the context of threads like these appearing, I still think that this place is largely an absolute shithole that represents the average Warhammer fanboy that will just buy this fucking shit. They will just buy it anyway, even if it sucks. Alright, next one. Hard counters and unit trading over unit synergy and combined arms, making the battle feel more like a card trading game than an immersive engagement. Holy shit. See how brutal this is, how harsh this is. More like a card trading game. My god, this is where you have... So you've got another term now, you have MOBA RPG tower defense card trading game now as a new one. These are damning terms. These are meant to be real-time tactics games. You're meant to have careful, chess-like, meticulous decision-making, but instead it's just fucking card games, MOBAs, RPGs. See how they're being described? Battlefield terrain is no longer as tied to morale and fatigue as before. For example, high ground used to boost morale and uphill slopes used to seriously slow units down. Wow. I remember there definitely were a lot of morale bonuses and malices from terrain. So if you held the high ground, I'm quite sure this applied in Shogun 1 at the very beginning, but in Shogun 2, if you are higher than your opponent, you get a morale bonus, so your unit will not only fight more effectively, but will fight for longer before breaking. So you're definitely incentivized to take the high ground from Shogun 1 all the way up to Shogun 2. And then, of course, with Rome 2, on launch it was completely reversed, which was absolutely embarrassing and pathetic, an absolute scandal. Less about strategy and more about your actions per minute, especially in multiplayer. Yeah, this is not a good thing, because then it turns into StarCraft, I think I've seen it be described as. The more actions per minute you're capable of, the better a player you should be. Action should always have utility, but it should not be so important that you can win or lose battles purely on the back of not being able to input enough commands. See a game like Men of War 2, which I'm also uploading to this channel, you can really see how deliberate, methodical, careful, patient, and insight-driven the gameplay is. It's about your vision, your ability to see and make good decisions, your judgment, that should always be more important than actions per minute. Should always be more important. This is not a fucking first-person shooter where hand-eye coordination is a big part of the satisfaction. This is tactics. You're fucking moving units around. You're making decisions about where to put units. It should be more about making decisions than just making actions. In my opinion, CE have put emphasis on flash over substance and battles to the point where it no longer feels like a total war game and more like any old generic RTS. Wow. Any old generic RTS. Would be interested to hear from you guys if this is an opinion that's shared or not. Wow, so he said, hear me out. Before I get downvoted to the depths of hell, hear me out, and then be interested to hear if you think that this opinion, this mere opinion, this simple opining that I did, my humble opining that has no basis in reality, it's just what I feel. Come on. Either you're right about this or you're not. Why would you say it if you're not sure that you're on the mark here? If you don't know the shot, why are you taking the shot? Come on, fuck's sake. I don't like this phoniness. It's one thing to ask people what they think about your arguments, because these are arguments. You're listing out contentions. How strong are my contentions? Have I missed things? That's what you should be asking. It shouldn't be, do you share my opinion? Oh my god. Alright, let's start looking at the comments now. Because 600 upvotes, so even the comments are getting approval. I agree on your second point. So he skips over 1 and he's talking about 2. Melee combat is over lightning fast in Warhammer and Three Kingdoms. It's a shame because both games have some really neat melee infantry. Really neat. In what way? If the gameplay sucks, then what? It looks cool? You like how it looks, or what? It has a cool name that someone made up for it and typed in. I also agree on the hard counters being too hard, with a dash of ranged units being disproportionately powerful. I don't know what you mean about stamina not mattering. If you sprint your units too much, they still get tired, and hills and high ground still give buffs. But they don't, though. You can sprint from as soon as the battle begins, right up until the battle's over, and won't be punished for it. It's not a factor then. It's not a factor. I totally agree with the combat being over way too fast. I used to zoom in and look at my guys fight it out, but in Warhammer, that's just not possible with all active abilities, etc. Yeah, and that's probably what he means by card game there. Abilities. In Napoleon, a full army battle could last even 30 to 40 minutes. In 3K, which I'm playing now, I'm surprised if the battle lasts 10 minutes. Yeah, definitely, that's too long. They're designed to be really short. I've fallen back in love with Napoleon. The ranged combat is fantastically done, artillery matter, cavalry charges hit hard, infantry are always the backbone of an army. Napoleon, my god. The attempt to touch up Empire, which was a train wreck. See, people are nostalgising about Napoleon when Napoleon got such a lukewarm reception. I'm going to look for some more comments here. I think there's going to be some good ones. Doesn't that get old after a while? I installed a mod that slowed down combat to be like good old Total War. I fought a few battles where I had outmaneuvered and pinned down the enemy force to the point where there was no chance I could lose, but the battles just dragged on. I removed the mod shortly after. So you modded a modern game designed to be casualised and were disappointed? What the hell? Personally, I miss what felt like actual tactics. Warhammer feels more like a case of rock, paper, scissors. You bang the two lines into each other and one gives way. I found in older titles, things like hammer and anvil tactics, flanking, etc. just felt more useful and important. Terrain 2. I think this is directly as a result of accelerated combat. Play Medieval 2 in a 20 versus 20 battle could last for 20 minutes of straight of slogging very, very easily. Rome was probably 1/3 of this at about 6 to 7 minutes. Warhammer's probably about 1/3 of this at 2 to 3 minutes. Holy shit. Preferred Rome 2 speed. I think the feeling of actual tactics is subjective. Oh my god. You're either thinking in ways that are tactical or you're not. My god, this is the thing. See, people think that words like tactics and strategy are just interchangeable and meaningless and are visceral. You just feel tactics or something, but there's actually books written on tactics. You realise that? There are military manuals written by tacticians. This is there have been tacticians. Like, you can read Sun Tzu, and the idea that tactics is just a subjective thing is laughable to you. You need to do that if you're capable of saying that tactics are all subjective. How do you make tactics subjective? What the fuck? It's like, is there anything subjective about the tactics of chess? What the fuck? Given all that, oh man, we have to read this. In my experience, when people are looking for tactics, they're looking for some combination of actual tactics and illusion, fantasy of tactics, and there's nothing wrong with this. For example, for some people, being able to exploit a bug to trounce the AI makes them feel like a genius commander winning against all odds. It shouldn't make them feel like that. Games that let people feel like that are not doing a good job of being games, and people that are willing to sit and do that over and over again have something wrong with them. You're not doing anything that's worth doing. It's meaningless. It's a meaningless action. What's the point of winning if you're going to just cheat? Why don't you just download the victory screen, print it, and slap it on your wall with some blue tack and just look at it? What's the point in going through the admittedly pointless and meaningless action of just exploiting if you're gonna to get the win? There's no point in playing games if you're gonna do that. But I suppose on a don't care looks cool shithole subreddit fan base, that doesn't come intuitively. See, when I was a kid and I was playing San Andreas or Vice City, I would never input cheats unless I was at my friend's house or something and we were just fucking around for like 10 minutes before we had to go home. When I'm sitting playing San Andreas in my house on my PS2 and I want to have fun, I am never putting in a single cheat code. I will beat the whole game and 100% it without cheating, because that way it means something. I faced the designed challenge and I overcame it. And when you're a kid, beating games actually means something. When you're an adult, you have to make your own challenge if your brain's developed properly. Like, see, if you're an adult and you're willing to sit and exploit bugs to win, what the fuck are you doing with your life? Holy shit. Single player games exploiting bugs to win. Holy shit, yep. Fucking hell. Other people refuse to exploit the bugs and don't count them against whichever game has them. Still others power game but don't like how easy the bugs make the game, and thus consider the game less tactical because the difficulty can largely be circumvented by bug exploits. Given all that stuff, I'm not super convinced the question, which Total War is more tactical, is really answerable in any objective way. But the thing is, we have Total War games where you can play the game while facing the challenge honestly, using the game systems properly, having your own insights and derived actions that are meaningful, and achieving victory in a way that means something, and you do it with tactics. Just watch any of my Shogun 2 Chad tournament streams. You'll see, just look at my Oboke Gorge, the way I play that. That's pure tactics. Tactics at every step. Not just from me, but from the player that's against me, that I'm butting heads with. That is just pure Total War tactics. Probably the purest Total War tactics that you can really get. And then you contrast that with this, single player exploiting bugs against a fucking AI with absolutely no brain. It's meaningless. What the fuck? No wonder people can think that there's no tactics in Total War games if they're going to do that bullshit. If they're looking at Warhammer while they make these statements, if these statements are informed by exploiting single player in fucking Warhammer, that's three things: exploiting in single player in Warhammer, then no fucking wonder they're so confused. Watch my showing into a Chad tournaments, especially the one I just did when I play against Triple Z Hacker, and the second game on Oboke Gorge, pure tactics. I mean, as good as it gets. Watch that and then come back here and say this shit again. Holy fuck. Ah yes, Rome, the game where I could batter a single hole in a wall, then park my head throwers outside and wait for a unit to stack up in front of the hole to be butchered repeatedly. Yep, so that's an example of just the game failing. The challenge falls apart. He's getting downvotes now? What the fuck? I'm not saying that it was perfect in Rome, and yeah, the phalanx were super broken. Yeah, that's the thing, I'm kind of confused here, because who the fuck did this with head throwers? I mean, everyone was exploiting phalanxes and chokes against dumb AI that didn't know how to flank or handle it. Phalanx, yeah, that's the example of exploiting a shit AI. But it would still be tactical. Stuff like this would happen, where the AI just completely fails to react rationally, and you get easy free kills, but that the rest of the game, you're fighting pitched battles where they come at you in the open field, and you get to employ tactics to overcome. You have to avail of your units and the systems of the game to achieve the best victory you're capable of. So it's a challenge, and you have to be tactical about it. I mean, what's the problem here? Why do people think that they can just totally undercut the notion that Rome Total War had tactics by saying, you can exploit a broken AI though? And what the fuck? What a comment is this? Like 3 upvotes on that pointless comment, and he's getting downvoted here even though he was upvoted here 30 times. That's fucking hell. Oh, of course, more tactical is subjective. Well, until you think about it, by which point you can approach it, what's it called? Returning to first principles. Just reductionism. When you reduce situations to their most simple parts and examine them, you can understand if something's tactical or not. What's the actual dynamic that's occurring? What are the entities? How are they interacting? What are the variables? None of that stuff is subjective. It's either happening or isn't. It's either tactical or isn't. Things like magic and flying units are completely new things and have their own tactical elements. Alright. But then there are a lot of the tactics missing from the old ones. Yep. Infantry feels largely pointless. Boom. Disintegration of Total War's order of battle. Sieges too. Yep. Meaningless and shitty. Defensive barricades are gone. They were kind of a new thing though. I think that started with Attila maybe. Trade and politics is kind of terrible. Yep. City management has been dumbed into oblivion, as is population management. Yep, these games have been totally streamlined. Campaign map is just simplified, streamlined, you're on rails. People sometimes speak up about Total War's modern campaign, but compared to something like Medieval 2, it's just an absolute mess. Empire, I think, was when they decided to just abandon ambition on the campaign map. And I think Rome 2 was when they decided to abandon ambition on the battle map. There are other benefits too, like lord leveling systems and unique unit variation. I just think the games have lost a hell of a lot, which older players will particularly notice and were initially drawn towards. Yep, that's it. That sums up everything. Yep. It bugs me that Attila wasn't better received. It probably has the nicest combat system in modern Total War games because that flanking fire and rear cavalry charging really fucking mattered. Cav would wreck you if your positioning wasn't correct, and letting archers shoot into your back would quickly lead to defeat. Whoa, fuck's sake, this is something every Total War game's had, what the hell? And Attila is just Rome 2 done again. I mean, even the way formations work, it's just click a button and get bonus. I've legitimately had battles in Warhammer against dwarves where a melee unit holds the front and I have archers behind the dwarves just point blank firing at the back. Still just don't break or die. Yeah, that's the game completely failing. That's surely the pinnacle of available action, and the player finds it and does it and it's useless. The game is failing hard. You have no recourse whatsoever in a situation like that. Game is just a failure. It's a failure of design. Game's just designed like shit. This is probably the correct answer. No design choice is objectively the correct one. It's all ultimately going to come down to what one wants out of a game. Alright, well, do you know what we'll do? We'll just close up all the game design courses because none of it matters. There's no real correct choice. It's all just down to what one wants out of the game. Developers can't get it right, can't get it wrong, so we don't need to teach them how to get it right and how to avoid getting it wrong. They can just do whatever they want because it doesn't matter. It all ultimately just comes down to what you want out of the game, so fuck it. That's because they aren't working on making the AI more reactive. The AI overcommit their entire army, and so as soon as you counter their move or pin them, they have nothing in reserve, and they make no attempt to break your pin or pin you elsewhere. This is something players do in multiplayer, and you really, really see it. Players are always trying to get you to overcommit so that they can capitalise on it. AI can't do that, and it's bad, and the AI hasn't been taught to do it. You just sit and wait, not because long battles are boring, but because the AI don't behave well enough to make longer battles interesting. CS designed them in a boring way. For quite some time now, they've been content with battles just being rush blobs. Yeah, they have. Your most fundamental strategy is a decision between spears centre or spears on your formation's wings. Otherwise, just go all in and flank with cavalry or fast infantry. It's thoughtless and silly, and while everyone cheers them on for cooler fantasy units or flashier special effects, I was worried for a while that I was alone in thinking battles were just plain and boring. Total War is massively whiffing on AI. Skirmishes of 300v300 should be interesting enough to play, and massive battles with thousands of soldiers should take time and effort. Instead, they play the exact same way as a skirmish. Line them up, match rock, paper, scissors appropriately, and charge. It's embarrassing design. 40 upvotes with my one going on it. And this is a good comment. This really sums it up. This guy is right about everything he said here. This is insightful, and it's analytical, and it's accurate, and he describes the problem here. And look at this. Ultimate General. I love it whenever Ultimate General gets brought up because this is Darth that single-handedly saved Empire's dignity to a large extent and was treated like shit for years and eventually dipped out because he was unwilling to continue to be treated like shit, and he started making his own games for Game Labs, and they are killing it. And of course now this is, see if Darth saw this. This is the point where he can just put his feet up and recline and be like, oh, I made it, I did it, I succeeded, I won, I did it. Because people are now piling praise on his games in contrast to Total War games on the shithole subreddit. So I love this. Played through Union and Confederate campaigns as well as each historical battle on both sides and had loads of fun. Constantly shifting front lines, pulling back regiments to replace them with a fresh one, making grand flanking manoeuvres, etc., and battles that last hours with an AI that constantly performs new manoeuvres to test your weaknesses. Of course, it's still somewhat exploitable, but hey, what can you do? More praise. People keep praising it. Look at this. Then that mod doesn't fix the morale properly because if a unit's pinned like that, it should rout or break. Yeah, see, that guy that was complaining about the mod earlier, well, it feels like ages ago. Didn't surrounded units fight to death in Medieval 2? Yeah, but not really. And no, Shogun 2 doesn't have this. It got corrected. So we had some good comments so far. Stamina doesn't matter because even if you sprint to the enemy, fight is over before you're very tired. Exactly, stamina doesn't matter. Did your cavalry walk by any Yari unit? Dead. Did your general look at a spear wall? Believe it or not, straight to dead. You overuse general? Dead. You underuse bodyguard? Also dead. Underuse, overuse. This is weird because people really don't understand how Shogun 2 worked. Like, I think people are just really bad at the game, never really push it, never get to grips with it. But cavalry in Shogun 2 is really important. in single player and in multiplayer. Just look at how much cavalry dominates in multiplayer tournaments with money on the line. You cannot win in Shogun 2 without cavalry, because it's just so important to get that flanking and that morale, and to maneuver, to control the field. These people are all talking about sending cavalry into the front of spears, as if that would ever happen. Look at this, you always trade. Sprinting is still a risk in my opinion, but on a field where range is so dangerous, the opportunity cost is low because of the range damage you take in trade, so you always sprint. But in my opinion, not because fatigue doesn't matter, but because range does. Alright, and now we've got, I don't know what this is. What the fuck is this? What is this? 300 upvotes, and it has a weird red outline for some reason. What the fuck is all this bullshit? What the fuck is this bullshit? I certainly think the game has shifted from a semi-realistic battle simulator into more of a traditional RTS, which is sad, because this is a game with units that you position with facing, and that have hundreds of men in them, and that have morale and stamina. So it means that the game has lost everything that made it distinct. However, I don't think this really constitutes a case of flashiness over depth of gameplay, at least on the battle maps. Well, yeah, of course, what else are we going to be talking about? But it does, though. It would be absurd to think it didn't, because that's exactly what they're going for. If this wasn't the case, they would have completely failed with what they're attempting, which is to woo Warhammer fanboys into buying their games. There's still a lot to think about in terms of unit matchup, synergies, formation, and army composition, particularly multiplayer. People always do this, they always go to multiplayer. But the thing is, see, in multiplayer, it's two people playing against each other. They are going to find edges anywhere that they exist. It doesn't mean anything. See if you compare the multiplayer in this to the multiplayer in Shogun 2. It's Warhammer multiplayer is going to just be so lacking in so many important ways. It doesn't really matter how sweaty the players are or how good the players are. Even something like chess, because it has such a rich tradition of players that push it to its absolute limits, you get all kinds of interesting stuff emerge out of a simple board game. It doesn't really contribute anything to say that people have managed to find some dynamics where otherwise they had no thought put into them whatsoever. Game is obviously not designed at any level for competitive multiplayer. It's just a complete fluke if anyone out there likes it in multiplayer whatsoever, because they're not being targeted. No budget was expended on trying to attract them. It's just an afterthought, and they just happen to have attached themselves. In single player, I would agree that a lot of the tactical depth can be stripped away by doom stacking and ranged unit cheese, at least in Warhammer. Strange comments, strange way of putting these comments. In single player, so it's like he's specifying, and then in Warhammer, specifying again. Single player in Warhammer. As for the old games, I've played since Rome 1, and I think a lot of the tactical depth in those games is often exaggerated today, but the gameplay speaks for itself. We can upload gameplay where we explain our thought processes and how the tactics works, and you can see the proof right there. We can do that with these older games. You cannot do it with these modern games because there's nothing to think about or to be able to articulate and explain. People talk about this stuff like it's really mystical. Like, we can never really know. Like, there's some veil that some smoky membrane that we have to just like feel through to see if we can get a vague idea. But we can just compare videos from people like me talking about Rome 1 and Shogun 2 and the tactics of it and the gameplay of it versus people that upload fucking Troy and Warhammer and the tactics of it and the gameplay of it, and explaining those aspects. Make a comparison between the two. That's the only thing that's subjective. The comparison that you make between those things. I think it's pretty open and shut. And once again, I appeal to my Shogun 2 chat tournaments, which are great examples of exemplary gameplay, tactical gameplay. The pace was certainly slower, and the larger maps and the greater emphasis on fatigue led to a lot more strategic posturing before the battle lines met. It's not strategic at all. People, this is strategic. It's not the word. There's no strategy on a battlefield. That being said, I have gotten through plenty of Shogun 2 campaigns with Yari Spear wall spam backed up with archers and cavalry flanking. I think other tactical options are there, but the battles can be gamified and AI abused much the same as the newer titles. So, who cares? It means nothing that you can do this. I can beat the most difficult missions in Red Alert 2 without making any military units. I can just spam miners. Let's have a look at this. Base down. Look, I didn't make a single military unit. Just war miners. War miners only, and I'm beating one of the hardest missions in the game.
Unit promoted.
Look, I was almost all the way up to the Kremlin with just fucking war miners. High hit points.
Unit ready.
And there's buildings with conscripts. And do you know how I did this? By exploiting the tactics that were available in the game. The game is tactical. Look, I'm holding the top there, and the way the terrain works means that they can't shoot up, they have to go around. So it's a compliment to the game that I can use just one type of unit by availing of tactics. People don't know what they're talking about. What the hell are you on about? Why would it surprise you that you can beat a game by leaning heavily on one type of unit if you do it properly? It's the way that you do it. At its core, the gameplay still boiled down to the infantry, archer, cavalry, rock, paper, scissors game, which in many ways has been expanded upon in your titles. No, it hasn't. It doesn't exist in fucking Three Kingdoms, or it didn't. It didn't at all for months, for years maybe. For more than a year, there was no rock, paper, scissors in Three Kingdoms. You would just run around with cavalry and steamroll everything. There was no rock, paper, scissors. There was just a fucking rock, a boulder of cavalry that just rolled over everything. And then in Troy, it's the same kind of shit again. It's just chariots. You just spam chariots and it's easy. They just run over everything. These games are not rock, paper, scissors at all. They're just messes. They're messes that haven't been playtested, that have not been properly designed. Overall, I don't think there's less strategic depth. I don't know what this means. I don't know what he thinks he means. But I think that the depth has certainly shifted to a more RTS style of play, as you noted. Though this works well for Warhammer, in my opinion, I do hope that the next major historical makes some effort to return to the older style. It won't. They're on their trajectory, and it's terminally declining, as the original post noted. I know a lot of the diehard fans much prefer a realistic war sim over the more strictly video game version of the Total War we see today. No, that's the same shit as fucking Admiral Price. We prefer a more engaging experience over a fucking action bird's eye view art gallery that means nothing, that you just watch, that you're not even participating in whatsoever, where it's just on rails, where you're just stacking modifiers that the developers have already calculated out to the exact 1% that you're able to stack. It's so off. You know what? I think you've hit the nail on the head, good sir. Well, seeing as he doesn't even know the difference between tactics and strategy, that's completely precluded. Just waffling. A lot of this is just waffle. Some of this was alright, but a lot of this is just waffle. The tactical depth is unnecessary, as AI limitations do not warrant their usage, Doomstack or not. For example, there's no need to overload a flank because the AI usually leaves it exposed to begin with. Nor is it necessary to kite with ranged units, as the AI neither prioritises them nor focuses fire on a single unit like a human being would. Some truth to this. The AI is so bad that you often don't need to think with any real depth. There's not really any second, third order thought happening there. There's no thought and counter thought, action, counter action really. The AI does its dumb thing, you counter it in the most rational possible way. You don't have to, but that's what you do. Oh man, I wonder if we're going to see anyone talking about shields in Shogun 2. Oh man, people are just going down, having arguments. Alright, so this guy's contradicting, doing a bit of pushback, I think. At least in Warhammer 2, it definitely makes a difference. Units tire fairly quickly and the exhaustion has a huge impact on movement speed and combat performance. Not what I've heard. I've seen it confirmed that you can play as elves and just run around the entire battlefield with impunity, not caring about your stamina. Doesn't make a difference. Agreed on all counts here, slower combat would open up more tactical options. Usually that's true, yeah. Sort of agree here, keeping units in reserve is seldom a smart choice, but I think it has more to do with the pace of the combat and the nature of the maps rather than stamina. Yep, you're incentivized to just commit everything immediately. Because you're not going to be able to outsmart the AI later on, you have to just commit everything and overload a flank and the chain route. Well, it's all data driven to say fatigue has no effect on later titles. Oh man, people cannot fucking write sentences in this place. Look at this. Well, it's all data driven to say fatigue has no effect on later titles is simply wrong. That's not a fucking coherent sentence, holy shit. And Warhammer, for example, tired has a threshold, reduces damage, reloading, exhausted reduces it more. Armour and charge bonus are affected by fatigue. Level protect changes. If you watch good MP players, they do rest units between engagements, keeping close eye on morale and fatigue. That's because they have to get every edge they can. Of course they're going to pay attention to it if it exists at all. People are saying though that it doesn't exist compared to how it used to. The core issue here is units are too flimsy. This is a combination of melee infantry taking damage too quickly and ranged units, primarily arty and archers / guns, just dishing out way too much damage. The way ranged units damage scales in this game is just obscenely overpowered. What makes it really bad too is the AI's range targeting priority is horrible. They completely fail to assess which units are the biggest threats on the battlefield, consistently targeting units like melee infantry over ranged units. And the AI would be able easily to do that if it was programmed to. The game is designed so that the AI is fucking stupid to make people feel as if they're achieving something and outsmarting the AI when they offer up sacrificial units. Infantry dies too fast, even and especially elite infantry that is meant to hold the line. Disintegration of Total War's order battle video. Yep. People arguing about what muskets and rifles are. Oh! The bigger problem, I think, is that every model in a handgunner unit can fire at the same time, even through other models in the same unit. Previous Total War titles didn't allow this. In Fall of the Samurai, you had to have special units or technologies that allowed for rank fire or kneel fire in order to increase your unit's fire rate, or, well, it would be volume of fire. Warhammer just lets every ranged model deal damage. Yep, so there's no actual gun tactics, because there's no fucking guns. Melee doesn't get to do that. Melee models still have to be able to reach their targets to deal damage, so only the front rank of melee models will actually be in combat. Thing is, this is just a component. You're appealing to a component and then using it to explain a phenomenon, but the game is obviously balanced with all of its components at the same time. So this is like when people say archers are so effective in Shogun 2 because there's no shields in Shogun 2, and they're completely wrong in every way, because the game's balanced already with the understanding that there's not going to be any shields, and secondly, archers suck in Shogun 2, so they're just wrong in every way. Can I find this in here? Oh my god, yep. Lack of shields didn't help in Shogun. Look at this. Battles should really be slower. Right now they are too fast, but to be fair, archer spam has been a problem since Shogun 2. What? What are you on about? What? You're wrong. Archers are not a problem in Shogun 2. Archers are the weakest unit in Shogun 2. Mass volleys of arrows melted any infantry in a few seconds in that game. No, it didn't. What are you on about? And this subreddit is so full of bullshitters. So full of shit. Alright, let's go back to where we were. Oh, man. How many comments are there on here? 300? 300 comments to go through. How much have we done? Alright, we're about a third of the way in, I think. Holy shit. No, about halfway. We're about halfway, alright. Let's keep going then. Maybe we'll get some more. Yeah, we're back to where we found. Back to how far we got, alright. Alright, we're back to where we were. And, yeah, that was coming up next. Holy shit, that was the next thing we were going to find. Wow. Okay, so I'm on the Warhammer 2 bus heavily, and I've also played for a really long time, so make the same assertion about I love the franchise. And Warhammer 2 units most definitely do get tired, and it most definitely does lower their combat capability. Rotating out units with reserves makes a meaningful difference. You're never incentivized to do that though, because those units were doing nothing if they were in reserve. In these modern Total War games, it's never a good idea to do that. Even in a game like Medieval 2, where there is a heavy incentive or reward for fighting with fresh men, you wouldn't want to do that because it's better to just have all of your units tired and in the right place than to have units in reserve doing nothing, waiting to get involved so that the being fresh will outperform the units that were tired. Choke point scenarios, exactly, that's what I was thinking of. So if you have a choke point on a hill, which is rare, in Medieval 2 you would probably want to cycle units. But in a game, a modern Total War game, where it doesn't make much difference, you would not want to do this. You still would not want to do this. Try fighting that gate with 4 units versus 1 unit with rotation and you'll do a lot better in the latter case. Barely. Plausibly barely, it sounds like. But I think the core problem here is that Warhammer 2, particularly fatigue, matters most for melee, and really ranged rules the field. It doesn't matter how tired your infantry is, if they've been chewed up by rattling guns, handgunners, as they advance. People would just keep complaining about ranged. Oh yeah, you can definitely make do without melee infantry, but you still need some kind of melee infantry, characters and monsters in most cases. The Thunderers can work depending on enemies, don't bring an all Thunderer stack. I don't know, I don't see how that's true. Either infantry is shit or it isn't. If it's shit, then you just bring more archers and put them in guard mode. Does Warhammer not even have fucking guard mode? Holy shit. Oh, and someone's complaining about the replenishment system. Casualties don't matter anymore. Yeah, because you can just wait for them to replenish, so it doesn't matter. Oh, and then there's the original poster again. This turned out to be far more constructive than I had ever hoped, and a testament that this community can be open to dialogue. My god, look at this. This community can be open to dialogue. From what I gather, the problem isn't an inherent lack of tactical depth. The core issues are actually ranged units outcompete melee. People prefer quick battles in single player. AI sucks. The game shifted away from realism towards RTS formula, health bars, APM min-maxing. I genuinely think this benefits fantasy, but it does make me worry for the future of fantasy historical. I genuinely think this benefits don't care looks cool people, but it does make me worry for the future of gameplay connoisseurs. That's what you would change it to if you wanted to fix this. See how they have to euphemize? They have to euphemize. So I think this benefits consumers that are casual and that just want a bird's eye moving art gallery experience. But it means that games are going to be shit if you want to play them. If you actually want to play them and not just look at them, they're going to be shit. Alright, I think I'm done here. We're just getting down to the chaff now, just comments that no one really approves of or upvoted. Let's look at most recent. We'll give some acknowledgement to those as well. Hard agree, 7 minutes ago, so it's still getting interest, less than 24 hours ago that it was posted, and it's still getting interest. It's always been like that. The games with the biggest tactical depth were Rome 1 and Medieval 2 and Empire Napoleon. You had to think how you use your units. Also known as the Total Wars before running speed was the default unit speed. Yep, that's another thing. Yep. I'll toggle when to run and I'll double click if I need to micro. Thank you very much. Wish there was a setting for that in recent titles. Yeah, it felt weird in Rome Remastered. It really felt weird. So that shows the difference. In Rome Total War, when you click to move units, they would walk, and running was reserved for combat. But now running is the default thing that you do. There's no reason not to run. Basically volunt words. Oh man. And we did get people saying on my subreddit, what was it again? Volunt should PM that guy and let him know this subreddit exists. Well, I'll put it this way. See if this absolute shithole subreddit keeps it up with being sensible, which is probably not likely because look, we have satire of the absolute cringe that happens on here. This is what they're capable of as well, remember? This is the other side of this shithole subreddit. Comment removed by moderator, what the fuck? Oh man, yep. It's probably going to be more this than this. Honestly, that's what I'm thinking. Especially if Warhammer 3 comes out and they have to crack down and delete stuff like this, which I think is what's going to happen. Warhammer 3 doesn't need to be good because they've done a pretty good job of scaring away all the old players that know what good games look like and that have expectations and standards. So they're probably going to start cracking down on people that are dissenters, and they're going to just try as hard as they can to just milk as much money out of the Warhammer consumer fanboys as they can. And Warhammer 3, I think, is a really easy way to just make a lot of money without much effort. So they're probably going to just go really heavy on the marketing, control all these channels that they have, like this shithole subreddit and their Discord, and anywhere else, Steam forums, maybe another place, and just sell as many copies as they can, and then move on to another place. So it's just slash and burn. That's the term I've used to describe what I think CA does now, slash and burn. They slashed and burned China. They slashed and burned Epic by just getting, like, what is it, $10 million from them for Troy to have an exclusive deal. And then they get to have it on Steam anyway, so they get to have their cake and eat it. And they're probably going to slash and burn all the Warhammer fanboys they've cultivated with getting them to pre-order Warhammer 3, and then it comes out and it sucks. So that's what I'm thinking. We'll see if I was right in a year. In the meantime, it's going to be funny to see how this shithole subreddit keeps spazzing out. Oh wait, let's have a look at this again. Let's have a look at this. Yep, so there's this, like, 3-to-2 ratio, and then let's have a look. I've got a link to this somewhere. Hang on. Yep, look at this thread here. So you've got 3-to-2 ratio. Everyone in the comments is spazzing out. Yeah, so it's going to be funny when this shithole subreddit fanboy community just completely spazzes out at a shitty Warhammer 3 and starts to turn their ire towards the hand that feeds. It's going to be entertaining, and I'll be covering it when the time comes. Alright, I'm out here.